Somerset, England, the Hungerford Castle. We're at Farleigh, Hungerford, and this place has a crazy tale, a twisted tale of intrigue. And at the end, we're going to go to the chapel here and see some really morbid things, including the lead case coffins. But there's a morbid twist to those. So let's take a little walk around the grounds here, and I'll give you a little bit of history before we go to the chapel at the end. Yeah, we're going to go back, way back to 1383. This place was built then by Thomas Hungerford. He had been elected to the first House of Commons, 1377. And from then he had accumulated much wealth. So this is the grounds of what is left of the castle that he built. It was handed down to his son Walter from there, and Walter left the castle to his son Robert, who was called the second Baron Hungerford. Unfortunately, the second Baron's eldest son, also called Robert, was captured in a battle in 1453. This is intertwined with the War of the Roses. Lancaster, House of Lancaster, crown battling the House of York, right? So there was a ransom to release Robert, £10,000. An enormous amount back then. But it was paid, and it really left the House of Hungerford here crippled financially. And all for what? Because both Roberts were in the House of Lancaster, who lost. This castle was confiscated by the Royal House of York. So they both were executed. All for naught, right? In 1486, another descendant came along, another Walter, Sir Walter Hungerford, and he regained control of this castle through the gifting of Henry VIII. Well, he had helped Henry in the Battle of Bosworth, in the victory, and I'm sure he was begging to get this place back. Henry rewarded him. In 1516, Sir Walter's son Edward became a member of Henry VIII's court. Now, he was a very successful man. He married a widow. Her name was Agnes Cottle. And she would turn out to be, and she was, an evil hag. In 1522, all of a sudden, Edward Hungerford mysteriously, suddenly died. And all eyes were on Agnes. How did this wealthy second husband of hers die so suddenly? Oh, she was accused, going back in time, of murdering her first husband in order to marry Edward. They all believed this, but now the pieces were being put together and she was accused. And it went to court. She was found guilty. The written records show that it was she who strangled her first husband with the help of 2 servants. Then she took his body in the kitchen, put him in the oven, and burned it. That's right. Well, they were all found guilty and hanged. And said she still haunts these grounds. Also here at the Hungerfords, the only man ever to be executed under the Buggery Act. Buggery Act of 1533 was the English law criminalizing same-sexual activities. Thomas Cromwell was in charge of that under Henry VIII. And it would be Edward's successor, his son Walter, that would be accused. He was a buddy of Cromwell's. This looks like a well or a dungeon. Goes way down. Well, Walter served with Thomas Cromwell in Henry VIII's court. Not a good association. It was 1540, and Walter, who was also suspected of treasonous activity and witchcraft. So the charges were made because, of course, Cromwell fell out of favor with Henry VIII. So the both of them were tried individually, but they added the charge of the buggery just to humiliate him on top of the other charges. And as you may know, both were beheaded at the Tower of London. Now let's go over and take a look at that tower. That is called the Lady Tower. And there's a story behind that, because that's where Walter kept someone. It's a 5-story tower, and it was like a prison. We go back to old Sir Walter, Mr. Buggery, and this is where he kept his third wife, Elizabeth. Locked in this tower for several years. It was thought that he wanted to be rid of her. He even ordered the chaplain to try to poison her. She had to rely on the local villagers for food and drink. That's why they call it the Lady Tower. Well, she wrote to Oliver Cromwell for help, but he ignored her. Things wouldn't work out so well for him in the end. Goes way up. Look at those windows. Just think how many centuries ago, what happened in that alcove. What were her stories? What did she endure day by day? You can just imagine her looking out, probably sitting right there, looking out that window. Just imagine. So, let's head over to the chapel and see if it's open to see these lead coffins. Well, the castle fell into the hands of the crown, and then like before in 1554, the family here, they somehow got it back again. (1645), it would be Sir Edmund Hungerford who would get control of the castle, but he would die within a matter of 3 short years. Next, in 1686, came the next heir, Edward Hungerford IV. But he had crazy habits. He liked to gamble and carouse, and he just wasted the fortune within a matter of years, and he lost this whole place. And that would be it for the Hungerfords. That would be it for them. By the early 1700s, the castle grounds would be sold for salvage. All the materials and fittings worth anything here were stripped away. And that's all we see that's left today. So let's see if we can get into this chapel. It's either down this way or down through here. I think this is the way. Or it might be either way. I think it's here. Yes. Is it open? And the door opens magically. Let's go down. This is the crypt of the Hungerfords. And in there are lead-lined coffins. Six, I believe, plus babies. Yes, there they are. And there you see in the back the two babies. Try to get a zoom in on that. Yeah, look at that. And look at the faces. There are faces. I think those are death masks. View of this one over here. Look at that. I believe this one on the left here is Walter Hungerford. And I'm going to use my phone because you can see he has a very interesting, ornate, hopefully I don't drop my phone, I'm going to switch, I'm on my cinematic camera now, but as you look around here, you can see his death mask, and it looks pretty remarkable, pretty detailed. So I'm going to switch over here. Okay, let's see if we can put our arm in here without dropping the phone. Yep. There you go. That is him. Interesting. All right, we'll pick it up with the other camera again. So from what I understand, back in the 1830s, still a long time ago, they had, this is when they discovered this crypt, these coffins. And they did some inspection and they determined that they were embalmed in spirits. I guess that would be wine or brandy or some type of alcohol. And that was so they would be preserved for the resurrection. So get this, some of the tourists would come down here, and the thing to do, the I gotta bend way down here. The thing to do here was they would drill holes in the coffins, and they would take a straw and they would drink. They would take a sip from the bodily fluids and the alcohol. Can you believe that? You talk about morbid. Now I'm morbid. You're morbid. That's why you're here. But are you doing that? Let me know. I'm sure there's one of you that would do it. But anyway, it said they would take a sip of the aged embalming fluid and bodily fluid so they could get a taste of the dead. Yummy, I guess. Maybe not. All right, well, that ends our tour here. We'll see you on the next one.